However rich the soil might be, it cannot be productive without cultivation. Similarly, the human mind without culture can never produce good fruit. However rich the soil might be, it cannot be productive without cultivation. Likewise, the human mind without culture can never produce good fruit. These are the words of a great man, Lucius Seneca, Roman statesman and philosopher, and also advisor to Roman Emperor Nero. Culture is hard to define and can be an ambiguous phenomenon. Culture can be viewed as a multi-dimensional concept or entity. For instance, for a scientist or a biologist, it could simply stand for a colony of bacteria. But in this case, what we're talking about here lies more in the branches of anthropology, or if you look at behavioral sciences, where you are exploring learned human behavioral patterns. Anthropologist Edward Tyler, who is considered by many as the father of cultural evolutionism, defined this term in his publication Primitive Culture in 1871. He defines culture as that complex which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, morals, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Culture is viewed as three multidimensional concepts. For instance, what we have in terms of materials and symbols, what we do in terms of behavioral patterns, in terms of attitudes, social arrangement, and what we think in terms of ideas, attitudes, and societal values. So it's what we have, what we do, and what we think. Let's take a moment to think about these concepts. There are some key themes from these definitions. First, we get the sense that culture is historically transmitted, that it is shared from one generation to another. Secondly, we learn that culture is learned and can be assimilated. Third, that it is symbolic. Fourth, that it is a form of lifestyle or a way of life in terms of values, in terms of ideas, and in terms of behavioral patterns. And lastly, we learn that culture is dynamic, it's continuously evolving and developing from one generation to another. It is critical, however, to keep in mind that culture is a human creation. And some will argue about what is authentic and inauthentic culture. What is important is evaluating each of the cultural entities and the motive behind them. For instance, we know that cultures change over time, and some cultural practices have in fact faced the test of time. It is our responsibility to keep that with what we believe is valuable and relevant to our day-to-day life, and throw out what we consider exploitative or manipulative or even outright dangerous and harmful practices. Ways of thinking that can no longer keep up with the needs of our communities can also be dropped. Culture evolves, it changes over time. However, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot forget that there is great value in our culture. Every individual belongs to a particular culture or a community, and each of these communities have their traditional values and belief systems. Culture is the glue which holds people in a particular community together. It's often manifested in our languages, it's often manifested in our lifestyles, it's manifested in our moral values, our arts, and our religions. These typically form the foundation from which we sprout or develop as individuals. We carry some of these core values and principles throughout our lives, while at the same time assimilate others along the way. Oftentimes, When we are able to understand a particular culture of a people, it will shed light into their values, it will shed light into their beliefs, it will shed light into their behaviors and mindsets. This will make us better informed and even more tolerant. Why is culture important to each one of us? One of the most critical elements is identity, having a sense of belonging, who we are in relation to others. It helps us become more comfortable in our skin and also helps us become more comfortable in our surroundings. Secondly, culture helps shape an individual in terms of principles, in terms of personality, in terms of attitude towards life, the way we think, and it also offers a threshold for us to monitor our standards and behavior. For instance, what is normal, what is appropriate, and what is expected of us. It can be a medium of communication. Culture gives meaning to difference. What we know that others don't. Why we are who we are, and why we do what we do and others don't. Culture also can be adaptive. It can be acquired by teaching and imitation. We're able to transfer knowledge across generations. It provides a system and framework of inheritance of ideas and inheritance of knowledge. Overall, culture is a foundation from which an individual is able to build a solid life and rise to greater heights. It is similar to building a house, where a strong and deep foundation is absolutely essential. A strong foundation offers the flexibility to add on a second floor, to add on a third floor, and even a fourth floor if you without compromising the stability and integrity of the structure. However, if one lacks a culture, if one lacks an identity, if one lacks a sense of belonging, if one lacks a framework to offer checks and balances in their lives, that's building a house with a weak foundation. A house with a foundation lacking concrete, a foundation built on clay, a foundation lacking reinforced steel. Later in life, even with opportunity to grow, even with the potential to grow, even with the resources to grow, and materials available to expand, any effort to add walls to this foundation, any effort to add another level to this house will compromise the structure. You will start to see cracks, and eventually it will crash down to the ground. We always need a strong foundation, a culture to support the walls and floors that will come above it, a culture that will provide a base to expand high and beyond. Otherwise, the top will always be vulnerable and dangerously unstable. Much as we continue to talk about a global culture, a melting pot of cultures, it is a combination of our unique values. It is a combination of our unique styles, our unique tradition, our unique languages that enables us to flourish and that enables us to continue to prosper. However rich the soil might be, it cannot be productive without cultivation. Similarly, the human mind without culture can never produce good fruit.